Welcome to Hush and Hunger. You won't know what you crave until it speaks. Now, don't speak. Just listen. The dark is already listening to you. Chapter 1. The apartment below. It was almost too quiet for a city. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from silence, but from walls that have learned how to keep secrets. Lena stepped into the apartment first. Her heels tapped lightly on the hardwood floor just once before she kicked them off and let the sound fall away. The air inside was cooler than expected. A stillness lingered, not stale, just alert. Mark came in behind her, keys jangling. "Not bad for the price, huh?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes moved along the edges of the space, the narrow hallway, the old radiator, the tall windows half shuttered against the light. It had character, she'd give it that. Peeling crown molding, a chandelier missing 3 crystals, and something odd about the living room. The way the sunlight came through at an angle, catching the dust just so, like the air wanted to show itself. She walked slowly, trailing her fingers along the wall. The paint was slightly uneven, textured, the way something looks after it's been patched over. Mark was already in the kitchen, opening drawers, commenting about the vintage charm of the fixtures. His voice echoed faintly, like it didn't belong to the room. Lena moved toward the bedroom. It was simple, square. The bed frame they'd ordered hadn't arrived yet. The only furniture was a mirror left behind by the last tenant, tall, heavy, framed in old brass, leaning against the far wall like it had been there a long time. Too long. She stared at it for a moment. Her reflection stared back, just a little slower than it should have. She blinked. It didn't matter. She was tired. They'd moved all day. "Still." "Babe?" Mark's voice called. "There's wine in the fridge. The weird kind you like." She turned, smiled. Weird is subjective. And yet, when she stepped out of the bedroom, she couldn't help but glance at the ceiling. Just once. Directly above the bed was a faint shadow. A square, like a panel. A service hatch, maybe. She hadn't noticed it before. She told herself it was nothing. But something about the light in this place made you notice the things you usually overlook. The first night, they didn't unpack much. Mark fell asleep with his laptop still open on his chest, headphones in, a spreadsheet blinking faintly on the screen. Lena watched him for a while, then rolled to her side. The sheets smelled like plastic and dust. The room was too quiet. Even the usual hum of city life seemed to stop at their window. She lay still, listening. There it was again, that hush. Not empty, not peaceful, just slightly aware. The kind of quiet you only notice when you're trying not to make noise. At 2:43 a.m., she sat up. The mirror in the corner caught her movement, the faint gleam of her skin in the silvered glass. She looked half-formed, pale, dissolving into shadow. A creak above the ceiling broke the silence. A floorboard, directly above the bed. She froze, then listened again. Nothing, just her own breath, suddenly loud in her ears. The landlord lived upstairs, Mr. Elliot Crane. He'd met them at the signing, well-dressed, polite, with the kind of stillness that makes you feel like you're being assessed. He'd handed her the keys personally. His fingers had brushed hers. Cold, dry, soft, like someone who didn't shake hands often. "We rarely hear from tenants," he'd said, "but I do take pride in keeping things well managed." She hadn't liked how he said things. Now she lay back, slowly, and stared at the ceiling. No more sounds. Still, the air felt strange. waited, as if something had recently been disturbed and hadn't yet settled back into place. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed she was lying in bed, exactly as she had been. Only the mirror didn't show her, just the bed, empty, and someone watching it from the ceiling. The next morning, Mark made coffee and talked about putting up shelves. He wanted the TV mounted, maybe a floating console. He'd seen something cool on Pinterest. Lena nodded, but her eyes kept drifting upward. The hatch in the ceiling, the panel above their bed. She hadn't mentioned the creak from the night before. It could have been pipes or old wood. That's what she told herself anyway. But now she was watching the angles, the vents, the lines where wall met floor. How the corners of the room felt tighter than they looked. She wandered the apartment barefoot while Mark worked in the other room, measuring things he wouldn't hang until next week. The hallway was narrow. The walls bore the faint scent of something metallic, like an old key that had been held too long. And the air felt warmer near the ceiling, just subtly, like breath. She walked into the bedroom again, alone, and stood in front of the mirror. Not to look at herself, just to see if anything had changed. The reflection was ordinary. Too ordinary. She turned to leave and caught a flicker. Not movement, a delay. She turned back sharply, stared. Her reflection caught up, a breath late. Goosebumps traced her shoulders. Behind her, Mark's voice echoed from the kitchen. "Do you know what time our lease appointment was? Crane wants a copy for his files." She didn't answer right away. Her voice, when it came, was soft. "Did he ever say why he chose us?" A pause. "No," Mark replied. "He just said we seemed quiet." That night, she couldn't sleep, and for the first time, she wondered, how long had Mr. Crane been living above? And how many apartments had ceilings that watched? Chapter 2. The ceiling has a voice. It began with breath, not hers, not Mark's, something quieter, shallower, like someone practicing how to sound asleep. Lena had stayed up late working, the glow of her laptop painting her thighs in electric blue. She wore one of Mark's shirts, half-buttoned, no bra. A glass of wine sat untouched on the nightstand. The apartment had been silent for hours. Until now, a slow exhale from above. Not from a vent, not mechanical, human. She froze, eyes locked on the ceiling above the bed. There. A second breath. Closer to the panel she'd noticed on the first night, the one Mark hadn't thought twice about. She closed the laptop, stood up, listened harder. Nothing now. No creak, no step, no voice. But the sensation lingered. Not fear. Something thinner. Stranger, like arousal without permission. She moved through the dark apartment barefoot, slow. The kitchen tile was cool beneath her feet. A breeze slid through the cracked window above the sink, but it wasn't cold. It was scented. Lavender, software unnatural, too precise for a draft. She paused. The hallway light flickered once, then held steady. From Mark's room came the sound of his soft snore, undisturbed, unaware. She looked toward the ceiling again, toward the point above their bed. The air pulsed gently. She couldn't explain it, only feel it. And then, very faintly, barely more than a vibration. Her name. Lena, not spoken, exhaled. She didn't scream, didn't run, just stood there, bare legs, bare throat, bare knowing. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty now. It had weight. And somewhere upstairs, Elliot Crane was still awake. The next day, she tried to be normal. She washed the dishes, answered emails, folded laundry. Mark was out early, site inspection, he said, and wouldn't be home until late. She didn't ask where. He didn't say exactly. At noon, she found herself staring at the ceiling again, that same square panel. She stood on the bed, curious, reached up, tapped the plasterboard gently. It sounded hollow. No draft, no insulation hum, just space. She stepped down quickly, heart thudding, and laughed at herself. A brittle sound, the kind you make when you're not quite sure you're alone. Later, while scrolling through her photos, she noticed something strange. A mirror shot she didn't remember taking. It was her, naked shoulders, half turned, looking over her own shoulder. The mirror captured her body, her neck, the curve of her spine, and something behind her. In the reflection at the top right corner, barely visible, a lens, small, black, embedded in the brass of the mirror's frame. Her blood ran cold. She got up, moved to the bedroom, examined the frame closely. There it was, a perfect circle the size of a pencil tip. Nothing obvious. Nothing you'd notice unless you were looking for it. Unless you already knew to look. Her pulse climbed. She checked the bathroom next, the hallway light, even the smoke detector in the living room. Each one had something. Not quite the same, but enough to count. Tiny black pinholes. She sat down slowly, knees trembling, and whispered, "How long have you been watching?" She didn't mean Mark. The apartment felt too quiet again, too still. Then, from the hallway, soft and clear, click, like a switch being turned, or a camera resetting. She didn't scream, but she did close the mirror door gently and lock the bedroom from the inside. That evening, Mark returned late. Smelled like whiskey and rain. He kissed her neck in the dark, said something about traffic, about how cold it had gotten. He didn't notice that her smile didn't reach her eyes. He never did. They lay in bed in silence. He scrolled. She stared at the ceiling. She didn't tell him about the mirror, the camera, the click, the breath. She didn't know why. Maybe because part of her wanted to keep it private. Just before sleep took her, she thought she heard it again. Her name. Not whispered. Written. On the air. Like the room remembered her skin. And wanted it back. She dreamed she was in the hallway. Naked. The mirror in her hands. The wall above her head split open like a mouth. And Elliot Crane stepped through. Fully clothed. Holding a glass of wine. He didn't touch her. Just watched. Smiled. And said, "You let me in." Chapter 3. The Invitation. Rain slid in narrow streaks down the kitchen window. Thin. Constant. A quiet rhythm against the glass. Lena sat at the table, barefoot, robe loose at the collarbone. She wasn't reading. Not really. Her fingers rested on the rim of her coffee mug like they were listening to something far away. Mark had left early again. No note this time. She didn't mind. The apartment felt clearer without his voice, as though the walls relaxed when he was gone. Her phone buzzed once. A text. From a number she didn't know. "You left the window cracked last night. That's why the heat won't hold." She stared at it. No name. No signature. Just that. She hadn't left the window cracked. At least, not on purpose. Before she could reply, another message appeared. Not a complaint. "I like the cold. It slows you down." She stood slowly, walked to the window, closed it. The latch clicked into place. Soft. Final. She turned toward the hallway and stopped. On the floor, just beneath the mirror, a small black box. Unmarked. No note. No ribbon. As though it had always belonged there. She knelt and opened it. Inside, a key. Ornate. Brass. Old. Worn smooth by use. She didn't know the locket fit, but her body responded to it before her mind could argue. Her breath shallowed, her fingertips tingled, her thighs warmed. This wasn't a gift, it was a test, and she had already failed. Not because she picked it up, because she didn't put it down. She didn't tell him about the key. Mark had come home late again, carrying the weight of a long day and the smell of wet concrete on his coat. He kissed her, made a lazy joke about how they still hadn't hung any pictures. Then he poured himself a drink and fell asleep on the couch. Lena stood by the bedroom door, holding the key in her hand. It was warm now, not from her touch. Before, from waiting. She walked into the bedroom without switching on the light. The mirror reflected just enough to guide her steps. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. The ceiling panel was still above the bed, closed, but she no longer believed it was sealed. She lay down, the key resting on her chest, heartbeat beneath it like a drum. Her robe loosened around her ribs, one bare thigh slipping free. Her breath slowed. Then, without warning, the softest vibration ran through the ceiling. Just once, like a footstep muffled by thought. She didn't move. She didn't scream. She only whispered, "I know you're there." And the room answered, just once. A low mechanical click from the direction of the vent, followed by silence. Not absence, permission. She turned onto her side, let her robe fall open. And for the first time, she didn't imagine being watched. She hoped she was. She woke sometime after midnight. Mark was still on the couch, his breathing slow, undisturbed. But the bedroom was warmer, not just in temperature, in presence. The key was no longer on her chest. It lay beside her on the pillow, as if it had been placed there with care. The mirror glowed faintly, not from outside light, from within. Its surface shimmered, soft and silken, like skin just after breath. She sat up slowly, robe falling to her waist. The ceiling panel remained untouched, but she could feel him, above, or inside, or both. Her thighs ached, not from sleep, from waiting. She pressed her knees together, as if that might contain the pulse. She failed. A soft tone chimed. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. No message, no call, just a screen. A single word in the center. Yes. She picked it up, hands trembling, but nothing else followed. No number, no name, just a black screen, and her reflection in it, half naked, mouth parted, eyes wide, and for a breath too long. She wasn't alone in that reflection. A second figure stood behind her, no face, just shape, tall, still, watching. The screen went dark, but the feeling stayed. Not fear, not shame. Something between surrender and ignition. And when she lay back down, she didn't close her robe. She left herself open, unlocked, and whispered to the dark, "Come if you're coming." No one entered, but something crossed, inside her. The key never fit any lock she could see, because the door it opened was already hers. Chapter 4. The night he didn't wake. The hallway, light buzzed softly as they stumbled in. Lena's heels clacked against the old wooden floor, too loud in the hush that followed laughter. Her lipstick was smudged. Mark's shirt was unbuttoned one too many. They were tipsy, maybe more than that. The kind of drunk that makes your skin loud and your thoughts quiet. The party had been long, loud, forgettable, but the silence now felt curated. Mark collapsed onto the couch with a lazy grin and a groan. "Just 10 minutes," he mumbled, one arm draped across his eyes. "My head is spinning." Lena chuckled. Dry, distant. She walked barefoot into the kitchen, her dress brushing her thighs like memory. The wine bottle waited where she'd left it earlier, unopened. A different one sat beside it, half empty. She hesitated. Had they opened that? She didn't remember, but she poured anyway. The wine was sweeter than she liked, heavy. It clung to her tongue like syrup. Behind her, the apartment creaked, not from the walls or the pipes, from above, from him. She turned off the light, let the room stay soft, unspecific. As she walked past Mark, she noticed. He wasn't snoring, but his breath was shallow, deep, drugged, almost. She paused. "Mark," she whispered. No response, not even a shift. She stared a moment longer, then moved on. There was a knock. Not at the door. Inside. From the stairs that led to the private service entrance. They'd never used it. It was meant for deliveries or guests. She opened it, slowly, and he stood there. Mr. Elliot Crane, pressed black shirt, clean-shaven. A small scar beneath his lip she hadn't noticed before. His gaze didn't move to Mark, only to her. He stepped inside without permission. He didn't need it. Lena felt it before he touched her, that shift in the air, like static waking up. The wine glass in her hand felt heavier, her breath shallower. "I came," he said softly, as agreed. She didn't understand, not fully, but her body did. She stepped back, and the door closed behind him, quietly, deliberately, like a ritual already begun. He didn't speak again, not with words. Lena stood near the kitchen island, one hand still wrapped around the stem of the glass, the other hovering midair. Mr. Crane's eyes moved slowly down her body, not leering, not rushing, studying, like she was a problem he'd already solved, and now simply admired the elegance of its shape. The room felt warmer. Or maybe it was her skin. He stepped closer, each footfall deliberate, soundless. She should have moved, asked him to leave, but her lips wouldn't part, and somewhere inside her something had already made peace with what would happen next. He took the glass from her hand without asking, set it down, then traced the hem of her dress with 2 fingers, light, slow, suggestive without demand. "You don't wear this for him," he said. Not a question. He moved behind her, close. His chest didn't touch her back, but the heat of him soaked through her spine. "I've seen," he whispered. "The way you hesitate before kissing him. The way your fingers wrap around the edge of the mattress when you come. Alone." Lena's breath hitched. He hadn't touched her yet, not really. Still, her body was reacting, her thighs tense, her heartbeat in her throat. He slid a silk ribbon from his pocket. Not red, not black, a soft gray, elegant, like something stolen from a box marked private. "Turn around," he murmured. She did, slowly, hands trembling at her sides. He raised the ribbon, not threatening, not fast, just present. "Your wrists." Her breath caught again, but she lifted her arms. He bound them, not tightly, artfully, with the ease of someone who had done it before. The silk lay against her skin, like breath, like approval. He kissed her. Once, not on the mouth, on the temple, then guided her, one hand firm at her lower back, into the living room. Mark didn't stir. Not even when Lena stumbled slightly, knees brushing the rug, heart pounding against bone. Mr. Elliot Crane sat first, then pulled her gently across his lap. The position wasn't obscene, not yet, but it was suggestive, vulnerable, exposed. She felt his palms settle on the curve of her hip. Rest there, waiting. "I won't ask if you deserve this," he said softly. "Desire is reason enough." And then, the first strike. Not cruel, measured. A sound more intimate than pain, skin on skin, echoing in the still room. She gasped. Her body curled forward. Reflex. Shame. Shock. He didn't restrain her. He waited. The second came slower, sharper. The third, lingering. By the fourth, her breath had changed, not jagged with resistance, fluid, like something being released, unknotted. He adjusted her slightly, her legs parted by gravity or design, her dress slipping further up with each movement, revealing more of the woman she wasn't supposed to be. His hand grazed the inside of her thigh. A pause, a question unspoken. She didn't pull away. He leaned close, voice against the curve of her ear. Now tell me, what else you've never done? Her breath came slower now, not calm, contained, held, like a flame cupped in the dark. He adjusted her again, lifting her wrists gently above her head. The silk caught against the fabric of the couch, pulling just enough to remind her. She was no longer in charge of how this night unfolded, and she hadn't said no. She hadn't said anything. His hand roamed lower, slower, not groping, reading, the way a pianist knows where the next key will live. He didn't undress her. He revealed her, bit by bit, the hem of her dress rising, her thighs opening, her breath catching. One finger traced the edge of her lace underwear. Her body answered before her mouth did. A gasp, a tremble, a low sound she didn't know she could make. He murmured something she didn't catch. Not English, not German. It sounded like ownership spoken as worship. And then he was inside her, not rushed, not soft, full, grounded, a rhythm she'd never known, one that asked nothing, explained nothing, but gave everything shape. Her moan was muffled against her bound wrists. The couch creaked beneath them, just once. Mark didn't stir. He wouldn't. Not tonight. The wine in her blood softened the edges of resistance. Her mind blurred. Her body remembered, even what it had never learned before. When she opened her eyes, she saw them in the reflection, on the black television screen across the room. Just outlines, just shadow and flesh. But her face wasn't afraid. It was changed. The man above her slowed, pressed deeper, and whispered, "This is the you he never asked to see." She came then, quiet, full-bodied, trembling, not with love, with recognition. When she awoke, sunlight reached only her ankles. The room was cold, the ribbon gone, her dress still twisted around her hips. Mark lay snoring softly, turned away from her. The wine glass sat on the table, empty, but a second one stood beside it, untouched. She rose on unsteady legs, her body aching in places she couldn't name. In the mirror above the sink, her reflection looked back, smudged, flushed, unfamiliar. She touched her own lips and whispered, "What have I done?" But the voice in her head replied, "No, darling, what have you become?" Chapter 5. The Witch in the Back Room. It was raining again, a slow, misty kind of rain that softened the edges of buildings and made familiar streets feel half erased. Lena walked without knowing why. Mark was at work. She'd said she needed air, but she didn't recognize the turn she'd taken. The street felt wrong, too quiet. The traffic behind her had faded. No people, no wind, just the distant hum of something unseen. That's when she saw it. A storefront nestled between two blank brick walls, narrow, dark, with no sign above the door. The windows were tinted brown from age. A flickering red bulb glowed just inside, casting a heartbeat of light against the glass. She should have kept walking. She didn't. The bell above the door jingled, not sharply, but like something old stretching after sleep. The shop smelled of lavender and iron. She stepped inside. Dust hung in the air like memory, shelves lined with jars, Herbs, bones, old glass bottles with no labels. A single oil lamp burned behind the counter. The warmth of it reached her ribs before she'd taken 3 steps. No music, no welcome, just the sensation of being expected. Then a voice, low, feminine, familiar in a way that made no sense. "I wondered when you'd find me." Lena turned. A woman stood behind the counter. Pale eyes, braided gray hair, skin like parchment and pearl. She wore a velvet shawl, deep red, and one long silver earring. Lena swallowed. I didn't know I was looking." The woman smiled without parting her lips. "No one ever does." She stepped around the counter slowly, as if careful not to spill the moment. "There's something you want erased," she said, "but not just forgotten." Lena's hands twitched. How do you know that?" The woman raised a brow. "Because you came in." She reached for a drawer beneath the display and pulled out a small bottle, stoppered, opaque, humming faintly in her hand. "The mind forgets. The body does not. This," she said, placing it gently on the table, "asks the body to let go too." Lena stared at it. The glass wasn't cold. It was warm, alive. "What does it do?" "It doesn't erase, it rewrites." Lena didn't move. Her heart felt too slow, her breath too shallow. "And the cost?" The woman leaned in. "You must choose one memory to keep. Only one. Everything else tied to the truth will fade with it." Leni stared at the bottle. Her fingers itched. She wasn't afraid. Not of the price. Only of the part of her that already knew which memory she would save. The witch, if that's what she was, didn't rush her. She simply waited, hands folded, gaze steady. Lena stood there in the hush, fingers brushing the lip of the bottle, pulse fluttering in her wrist like a moth caught under glass. One memory. She thought of Mark. The first time he told her he loved her, standing in the rain outside a grocery store, his hands shaking. The soft panic in his voice. The way he'd said it like a question. She remembered kissing him then. Warm, certain, real. But another image slipped in. A ribbon, gray silk, sliding over her wrists like it belonged there. A voice whispering, "You let me in." Lena closed her eyes. She couldn't keep both. The witch's voice came, soft and without judgment. "You can choose love, or the thing that let you feel it for the first time." Lena didn't cry. She reached for the bottle and whispered, "The ribbon." The witch nodded. "A good choice. Dangerous, but good." She pulled out a small knife, silver, thin as a letter opener, and pricked Lena's fingertip. Blood beaded. The witch touched it to the bottle seal. The glass hissed. Lena felt it before she swallowed. The warmth sliding down her throat like candle wax, sweet and sharp, with a taste that wasn't flavor but memory itself. And then, lightness, as if part of her had been unhooked from gravity. She staggered slightly. The witch caught her arm. "Rest, if you need to." But Lena shook her head. Already the edges were fading. She couldn't quite remember what Mark had whispered in that rainstorm. His voice blurred, his face softened, distant, like a dream she'd told herself too often. She left the shop slowly. The door closed behind her without a sound, and when she looked back, it was gone. Only a brick wall remained, wet with rain, empty, but her palms still tingled. And that night, when Mark touched her, she flinched, not because she didn't know him, but because his hands didn't know her anymore. Mark made dinner that night. Candlelight, music low. The kind of effort he only made when something felt broken. Lena sat across from him, her fork untouched, a smile stitched onto her lips like a borrowed coat. He told stories, work frustrations, jokes about neighbors she didn't remember knowing. His voice moved through the room like it always had, easy and warm. But it didn't settle inside her. It hovered. Outside. Like a soundproof wall had gone up behind her ribs. When he reached for her hand, she let him. But her fingers didn't tighten around his. Later, they lay in bed. He kissed her slowly. Lovingly, she responded out of habit. But the heat wasn't there. Not where it used to be. He moved above her, lips against her collarbone, whispering her name like a promise. She stared past him, toward the ceiling, toward the square panel she'd once feared, once fixated on. Now she couldn't remember why. When he slid into her, she let him. Her body moved, but her breath didn't hitch. Her hips didn't lift. Her hands didn't search for the edge of control. And when she came, it was a shadow of the sound she'd made that night, the night she chose not to forget. After, Mark curled around her, satisfied. "I missed this," he said softly, brushing her hair back. She turned her face toward the pillow. "I didn't." The words escaped before she knew she'd spoken. He froze. She didn't explain. Couldn't. Because how do you tell someone you've erased the parts of yourself they were ever welcome in? When he finally fell asleep, she lay awake, eyes on the ceiling, waiting for the sound, the breath, the voice. But nothing came. Only silence, and the faint echo of her own name, spoken not aloud, but from within. A name no longer tethered to love, but to hunger. Chapter 6. The forgotten skin she no longer knew when it had started. Not truly, not in ways she could explain. But her body knew. It flinched from Mark's touch in the morning, politely, automatically. It leaned toward shadows instead of sunlight. It craved stillness, listening, watching. Some nights she woke wet, aching, breath caught between sleep and something else. Not a dream, a visitation. She would reach down between her thighs and find her fingers already moving, not because she wanted to, but because something had asked for her, and she had answered. Without words, without memory. The mirror in the bedroom had begun to feel unreliable. She'd catch her reflection standing too still, blinking just too late, tilting its head when hers hadn't moved. One night, she wiped away a smudge and found a handprint, larger than hers, high up, near the frame. She stared at it, not afraid, not really, just recognizing it. In the hallway, a cold spot had formed near the closet door, a patch of air that lingered around her ankles, curling up her calves when she passed. She never mentioned it to Mark. There wasn't much she said to him anymore. He still tried. He still looked at her like she was a woman he loved. But she no longer felt like his wife. She felt like a room he had moved out of, quietly, without packing. And in that empty room, something else had taken up residence. Something that didn't need her memories, only her skin. The mirror had begun whispering, not with sound, not with voice, with breath, with posture, with silence. Lena would catch herself standing in front of it longer each day, not admiring, studying, watching how her reflection moved, how it paused just after she did, how it sometimes tilted its head the way he had. Elliot. She didn't speak his name anymore. Not out loud, not even to herself. But it lived in her hips when she walked barefoot across cold tile. It curled between her fingers when she touched her lips absent-mindedly. He was no longer a man who lived upstairs. He was the rhythm her body had learned to follow. One evening, the lights flickered just as she passed the bedroom. The mirror caught her mid-motion, and she stopped. Because the version of her in the glass was different, not in body, in gaze, confident, loose, hungry. Her robe was open in the reflection, though it was tied tightly at her waist. She leaned closer. The woman in the glass smiled, just a little, and whispered, "He's still watching." Lina didn't move. Her heart didn't race. Her thighs warmed. Then the voice again, low, impossibly close, not hers. "Wouldn't it be easier to let him in if you let yourself out?" She reached for the mirror. Her fingers met glass, but the glass was warm, alive. She stayed there a while, not to understand, to remember. Because the reflection didn't lie. The reflection never forgot. Mark had begun talking in his sleep. Half sentences, fragments. Lina would wake to the sound of him murmuring beside her. Soft, lost things. "You don't see me. Not like before. Who are you when I'm not watching?" She never woke him. Didn't ask. She barely touched him anymore, except in passing. A hand on his shoulder, a brush of fingers. Skin meeting skin with the quiet grief of strangers. And yet, he still looked at her like he was trying to find something he'd once owned, as if it were hidden behind her eyes. But it wasn't. It was gone. Given. Taken. Some nights, she watched him sleep and wondered if he had dreamed of Elliot Crane. If he knew what he had offered, if the guilt lived beneath the surface or had already fossilized into something simpler. One morning, she found his phone open on the kitchen counter. A message chain. Elliot's number. Mark's words, weeks ago. "She won't know. I'll make sure she drinks enough. Just keep your part discreet." Her hands didn't shake. Not this time. She simply closed the screen and walked upstairs. Not to confront, not to plead, but because the part of her that might have cared had already curled into silence. That night, Mark lay in bed, unaware. She stood by the mirror in nothing but her skin, watched herself breathe, watched the shape behind her shift. And when she reached back, she didn't find her husband. She found hands that remembered how to hold her, exactly the way she wanted to be forgotten. Chapter 7. The Woman Who Left Without Leaving. Mark began calling her by a nickname she didn't recognize. Lenny. Software familiar. Something he must have used once, early maybe. She didn't remember it, and it didn't fit. It clung awkwardly to her skin like a borrowed sweater from a past she no longer wore. He said it like it was supposed to summon something tender between them. But every time it passed his lips, she felt further away. Sometimes she'd look at him and feel the faintest flicker of pity, for how little he knew her now, for how much he thought he still did. He'd bring her tea in the morning, rub her shoulders, smile like they shared something no one else could see. But she wasn't there, not fully, not anymore. Something else had moved into her bones. Not Elliot, not the witch, not the memory she'd kept, but the woman who remained when everything else had been stripped away. The one who didn't flinch when her name echoed from the vents in the ceiling. The one who didn't hide when the mirror smiled first. The one who had not been created by love, but by observation, by choice. She whispered her real name to herself in the dark. Not Lenny, not Baby, not even Lina. A name older than them all, given in silence, written in touch, and only spoken by the mouth of someone who had never stopped watching. Even now, especially now, from the room above, where he waited, not for her permission, but for her return. Mark found her on the balcony one morning. She was in her robe. No coffee, no phone. just staring out over the street like she was waiting for something that didn't exist. Or maybe remembering something she'd never told him about. He placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch, but she didn't lean in either. He tried gently. "You've been different lately." She didn't answer. "I don't know what happened between us." She looked at him, really looked. His tired eyes, the small scar at his temple, the way he held his hands like he was always apologizing. But she didn't feel anything. Not pain, not loss, just distance. A clean, untouchable distance. "I do," she said softly, then turned back toward the window. He stood there a moment longer, then whispered, "I miss you." And in that quiet, she heard the sound of a door opening upstairs. Not in reality, in her. Her body answered before her voice could. "I don't." She walked past him, didn't touch his hand, didn't say goodbye. Back inside, she closed the bedroom door. The mirror was already uncovered. The reflection was already waiting. She didn't know how long she'd been standing there. Naked, quiet, breathing with the mirror. Her reflections no longer delayed, no longer watched. It moved first, smiled first, opened its arms, not in welcome, in invitation. Behind her, the ceiling creaked. Not subtle, not shy. A sound of weight shifting, then another. The soft hush of movement through space that should have been empty. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. The air thickened. Warmth spread across her shoulders. Breath without lips. Presence without form. And then, hands. Slow. Familiar. Reverent. Not marks. Never marks. They touched her like they knew where she ached before she did. She didn't speak. She opened. Her wrists came together behind her back without instruction. Her thighs parted with memory, not desire. And when he pressed into her, she felt herself dissolve, not into him, but into her. The woman in the mirror, the one who had watched for weeks, who had learned her breath, her shiver, her want, and now stepped forward, as skin, as voice, as home. He moved inside her with the rhythm of someone who had waited too long, but would never rush. Every thrust said, "I was always here." Every moan said, "I never left." And when she came, it wasn't a climax. It was a completion, a ceiling. When it was done, the room felt silent, not empty, still, balanced. She stood alone again, but not the same. Her reflection still smiled, but her own lips didn't move. And when she walked past Mark's sleeping body the next morning, she didn't look at him. She only looked up, toward the ceiling, toward the room above, and whispered, "I'm ready." The silence that answered her wasn't silence. It was possession. The apartment was quiet again, the kind of quiet that knows how to wait. Mark lived alone now. He told friends Lena had left for space, said they were working things out. He never mentioned the mirror, never noticed the way the vents still clicked softly at 3:15 a.m. Sometimes, when he passed the bedroom, he'd pause, swear he'd heard something, a breath, a laugh. Once, a low moan that wasn't hers anymore. He started sleeping with the TV on, just for sound, just to fill the quiet that no longer felt like silence. One night, after too much whiskey, he stumbled into bed and whispered, "I'm sorry." And the room answered, not in words, in warmth. A breath near his ear, a voice that was not Lena's, but close. Closer than it should be, closer than he wanted. And it said, "You should have known better than to watch without asking." The mirror across the room blinked, then smiled, and upstairs, behind walls no one could see. Elliot Crane poured a glass of wine and waited for the next one.
Did this story leave a mark on you? Then go ahead, subscribe to the channel. More seductive horror stories are waiting in the dark. Somewhere between desire and dread, a voice is already whispering your name. Are you ready for the darkness? Then close your eyes, but not all the way.